Good evening, everybody. It is Monday, October 18th. We're going to begin this evening by holding a public hearing. The notice for the Romeo public hearing, Monday, October 18th, 7 o'clock, the Romeo Community Center. The purpose of this public hearing is to gain citizen input regarding the 2022 to 2037 Romeo Downtown Development Authority Plan Update. The development area consists of the area of the Village of Romeo, Michigan, within the boundaries described as follows. Starting at the intersection of North Main Street and Dickinson Street, east to North Bailey Street, south to Newberry Street, east 150 feet to the north-south alley, south to Lafayette Street, west to Bailey Street, south to Washington Street, west to South Rawls Street, north to Lafayette Street, west 150 feet to the north-south alley, north to Newberry Street, east to North Rawls Street, north to Church Street, east to North Main Street, north to the intersection of North Main Street and Dickinson. This public hearing is now open. Is there anybody present who wishes to give public comment for the DDA master plan? All right. I did receive one comment that I will note from Mike Romano from Tech City. He believes, he would like to suggest that we add, within the boundaries of the DDA plan update, he would like to see directional arrows painted on the parking lot / alley behind the Parker building, which is on the South Main Street, in an effort to cut down on the close call accidents with cars coming and going from this lot, as well as additional signage, like was installed a couple of years back near the entrance of the alley between the hardware store and the dry cleaners. And he did give me a nice diagram, so I can pass this on to you and you can see what specific locations he's speaking of. So, is there any other comment, explanation, or presentation? Did you have anything that you wanted to go ahead and add, Amanda?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to speak now or during the agenda item. I'm fine with either way.
Why don't you go ahead and do it now in case that it generates any other public comment?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amanda Minato, and I'm here with my colleague, John Hokazi. We're from the Macomb County Planning and Economic Development Department. About 6 months back, the DDA reached out to us to help them update their Romeo DDA plan and TIF plan, which is set to expire at the end of 2021. So we worked closely with the DDA over the course of the last 6 months. We put out an online public survey that was promoted via Facebook, the county website and the DDA website, and a press release to gain citizen input on some of the goals and objectives of the DDA plan. It was fairly well received. I believe we received about 50 comments, 50 individuals, which is honestly pretty good for a smaller sized community. We do a lot of these public surveys and don't get a great response, so that was pretty good input. We presented that to the DDA, and many of the comments and suggestions were incorporated into the goals and objectives of the plan. We added a few sections, updated some of the maps, did some demographic information. I believe you were all given a copy of it, so at this point I'm happy to answer any questions on it. We did do a map that shows the existing sort of land use and businesses within the DDA. Obviously it's kind of a static map, those things can change. It shows where restaurants are, office space, like the village facilities and things like that, but it's a good tool to kind of see where you're at this point in time and how you might change over the course of the next 15 years. So the plan is for another 15 years to have the DDA going, and the TIF projections in the plan are at the very last page. So on the final page you have the TIF chart, which kind of goes over how the capture is estimated to be over the course of the next 15 years. And it breaks down everything by the millages that are being captured. So county, library, community college, STAR, Parks and Rec, veterans, HCMA, and SMART. And it shows all of those millage rates, and then it looks at the projected inflation rate over the next 15 years as well. So you're looking at a capture of a total of about $4 million over the next 15 years. And also included in the plan is on page 15 and 16, kind of the meat of the plan, which goes over the as I mentioned, the goals and objectives of the DDA. So the long-term and short-term programs and projects that they'd like to see accomplished with the funds that are being captured. There are very rough cost estimates included in here, and we sort of added a project timeline of long-term, short-term, ongoing, and things like that. So very similar to what the DDA had in their previous plan. A lot of their goals and objectives have remained the same, and when going through the budget, a lot of those things are what they do on a yearly basis. So roads, streetscape signage, wayfinding improvements, beautification, holiday lighting and decorations, marketing and business, recruitment, things like that for the downtown. So we had a lot of fun doing it, and really was nice learning a little bit more about downtown Romeo and all the great things you guys have. So, I'm here to answer any questions if you have them. We did do the public hearing today, so everyone has the opportunity to comment on it. And then after this, if you guys vote to approve the plan, I'll work with the new executive director, Elizabeth, and we'll get it submitted to the state for review and approval. So that's kind of the next steps on it as well. So, yeah, if anyone has any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
I do. How does the map of the building use, how does that affect the overall plan? Because I've noticed that there's quite a few of these, as they're marked now, aren't correct.
So I did receive some comments on that. I know specifically Elizabeth and I sat down and talked about it on Thursday. What I was told is like some of the businesses are 3 stories and have condos on the top, and then below is perhaps an office or a restaurant. This data is pulled from SEMCOG, Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, and their inventory, and then we made the map from that. But basically, if it's a multi-use parcel, we would just take the majority of that parcel. So if 60% of it is condo space and the other 40 is like an office or a restaurant space, it's gonna be classified as condo because there's no way on the static map to like kind of show the difference of it. It's sort of just kind of like an extra feature that we added. It's not required by the state legislation to have it in there. We just sort of thought it would be a nice tool for you guys to have and see. And it's easily fixed. If it's something you wanted updated every year on the website, our GIS team can certainly do that to make sure it's relevant and useful for the community.
Good. Thank you.
I have a question. I think I understand the revenue that is generated. There is the village portion, and then there's the tax, tax within the district, and then the other one is made up of each one of those. So much that would have been library, the Star, the Parks and Rec, all that percentage. So you add up all of those, and that's how you get the total funding.
And what it was, I believe when the plan was established in, forgive me, I believe it was the 1970s. That was what the base of those property values were. So say if one property was valued at $50,000 and today it's valued at $100,000, you're still getting the $50,000 tax where the DDA is capturing that difference in what the property values are.
And then the schools are not affected.
No,
all the money goes to the schools still.
Yep.
And so if there was not a DDA, all those different funds would be going to out of the village.
Yes.
So that's what the benefit that we're getting from. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the DDA, but
yes, that's correct.
that's the money. All right, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions from the board or public comment? Any questions? All right. Amanda, I appreciate your presentation. I'm going to close this portion of the public hearing, and I'm then going to open up the regular Board of Trustees meeting, again, October 18th, 2021. It is 7:10. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Bartholomew?
Here.
Edwards?
Here.
Fowler?
Yes.
Hart?
Here.
Parker?
Here.
Wozniacki?
Here.
Malzahn?
Here.
7 present.
Perfect, we have a quorum. Moving on to the consent agenda. In your packet, you have the minutes from September 20th, 21. Closed session minutes were at your table when you arrived from September 20th, 21. Council bills and the vendor report. The first amount is $311,694.92 and $31,475.20, as well as your meeting agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, or is there discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a question on the check registry.
Is it a question, or do you need to pull it out? Are you looking for clarification on
Just
something?
clarification.
Mm-hmm.
We can do that now. Just, was going through the G2 Consulting Group, 3,900. Question what that was for.
You are on the, I'm sorry,
Check
are you on the
registry For the village.
check registry?
Yeah.
Okay. What line item is that? Oh, I see it down here.
Right below DTE.
$3,900. Catherine, are you aware of what that invoice was for?
I believe that was that the consulting fee for the parking?
Nope,
The
that would,
sidewalk?
nope, that would have been HRC.
Okay, well, it wasn't, notified prior to the meeting that this was a concern, so no, I don't have that answer right now.
Mhm.
Well, isn't that why we have this right now? This is why it's on the agenda and we talk about it in open forum. So you should be prepared to answer all of our questions.
Okay, well, I understand what you're saying, but, no, I don't have an answer for you right now.
Okay.
Thank you for
So we have
pointing
a
that out.
motion on the
Support.
floor by Edwards. Do we have support?
Support.
Support by Bartholomew. Is there any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Edward?
Yeah, will you be getting back to Justin then on that?
Yes.
Yes.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Kwasniewski?
No.
Parker?
No.
Hart?
Yes.
Fowler?
No.
President Malzahn?
Yes.
4-3, motion carried.
All right. Special presentations are next up. This evening, we were lucky enough to have our Romeo Community Schools Superintendent, Mr. Robinson, here with us, and he would like to just go over the review for the bond proposal, which will be on everybody's ballot.
So thank you, good evening. I'm not sure how special, but, tomorrow, we're 2 weeks away, actually, from the November 2nd election day, so, we're kind of in the thick of it, and many of you are probably, informed and up to date, but, I asked, Christine if I could come and just share a few thoughts with you and kind of remind people to vote. So I have two things that I put at your seat tonight. First is just a fact card on the election. You may have seen one of those, that's one of our common publications. There's also a couple mailings that have gone out to residents that hopefully have informed voters. So in lieu of a slideshow tonight, I just put together a packet for you of the slides that I would have shared, and I'd like to just take a minute to go through those if I could. So on the November 2nd ballot, we have two important proposals for our district. Our slogan for this year's campaign is our students, our families, and our community, building our future together. The first proposal on the ballot is a non-homestead millage renewal. I would remind the board and the citizens here and those that might watch that this is a 3-year renewal to a current millage. Michigan law has required school districts to levy 18 mills on non-homestead properties since Proposal A was put into place in the 90s. So this allows us to receive our full share of state aid that's approved by the legislature. So this millage is on businesses, second homes, rental properties, and vacant land. This does not impact primary residences. So the non-homestead millage for our district generates about $7.9 million annually. That's about 14% of our general fund budget. So this isn't any increase to our non-homestead property owners. It's just a renewal of the current millage for additional 3 years. The second proposal is the 2021 facilities bond. This actually is phase 2 of a long-range plan that was developed prior to the 2016 bond. This again is a no tax rate increase proposal for the voters to consider. This will generate about $87.5 million funding projects from 2022 to 2027. If you go to the third page of your packet, you'll see a slide that's the Macomb County level comparison. So we're grateful for the opportunity to come to the voters with both of these proposals at no tax rate increase, and in doing that, we still maintain the third lowest debt rate retirement in the county. So out of the 21 school districts, at 3.99 debt rate retirement, we're third lowest in the county. And that will continue to be the case should the voters support the proposal, the facilities bond proposal on November 2nd. We're appreciative of the support of the 2016 bond, which was the first significant investment really in school district facilities over as much as 2 decades. Just to highlight a few of the major accomplishments of the 2016 bond, of course, the new Romeo High School on Jewel Road, and the athletic facilities, the stadium, turf field, and that I know the community has a lot of exposure to. We created a new Romeo Middle School that consolidated our 2 former middle schools into one comprehensive middle school. That involved some renovation to the former Romeo High School facility so that it could serve our middle level adolescents. I'm proud to say that the enrollment at Romeo Middle School is over 1,200 students. As a 15-year middle level principal, that's a lot of middle schoolers. But we're grateful to have that facility and the renovations, and we're thankful to really be returning to what appears to be a normal school routine this year. So there's a lot of renovations that have happened at the middle school that because of the limitations of the pandemic last year, the public really hasn't had the opportunity to see. But I encourage members of the board and the public to come out to a middle school game. And one of my favorite things we've done in the 2016 bond is the renovation of that gymnasium. I think if you haven't been in there and in the hallway outside of the gym, you'll be pretty impressed. We converted the former Powell Middle School into the Powell 9th Grade Academy. So our 9th graders attended that building for 1 year. Still on the campus of the high school, so we can have students take classes in both facilities, but they're primarily, 9th graders for the most part stay at Powell until we get to extracurricular activities. I talked a little bit about the athletic facility improvements. In the phase 1 of the plan, there was a goal of a 1 campus vision for Romeo High School, and that was to get all fields to the Jewel Road campus. And we weren't able to accomplish that, but we certainly made significant progress with the track in the stadium. One of the last projects that will happen this year, that's part of the 2016 bond, is new tennis courts will be built on the Jewel Road facility, and we're looking forward to that because that's not only an important facility for our physical education classes and our teams, but also for the community. The last project in 2016 will be the building of our new transportation facility. We're going out to bid later this month, later in November on both the transportation facility and the tennis courts. We anticipate construction to begin just as we come out of winter, and both of those facilities will be done by August. Tennis courts, of course, sooner than the transportation.
Where will that facility be?
That's right on the current site where it is.
Okay.
So we have enough space to build a new facility, stay operational in the current building, and then next summer we'll take the old facility down. So the primary focus of the 2016 bond was on our secondary students and our secondary facilities. The focus changes significantly with the 2021 facilities bond. So the primary focus is meeting the needs of our youngest learners while, of course, continuing to enhance our K-12 academic and extracurricular programs. So if you look on what I think is page 4 of your packet, you'll see this bond has been laid out in 7 key elements, and we have a variety of resources on our district webpage, things that have been posted on social media that break down the 7 key elements in detail. And I would encourage you, really anyone, to take a few minutes, especially if there's specific elements that you might not fully understand. These are 5 to 9 minute conversations. Sometimes they have other members of our staff involved, but the 7 elements are advancing health and safety. And we know safety for many years in schools was more secured entry, active shooter responses and things like that, and that still is certainly important to us, but with the pandemic, there's a new element of health and safety when we talk about HVAC equipment and exchanging fresh air and things like that. So we'll make some investments in that area. Enhancing early childhood is a significant investment in the Croswell Early Childhood Center that will also include a small addition. Croswell is a good facility, but it's tired and it needs some renovation. We think our 3 and 4-year-olds in the community should have a state-of-the-art facility just like our high school kids do. We don't need to build a new facility, and many districts have done that. They spent $25 to $30 million on an early childhood facility. We think we can invest about $15 million into Croswell and get a state-of-the-art facility. One of the things that I think I would mention to this element, if you follow what the conversation is around preschool, both in the state and nationally, there's a significant effort to have universal free preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds. And we've made some steps in that direction in the state of Michigan with expanding the Great Start Readiness Program. But we want to be ready in the future so that if that happens, we have enough space to service all the 3 and 4-year-olds in our community. Innovating elementary learning environments. We want to make some of the same investments into our 5 elementary schools, similar to what we did in the high school in creating collaborative spaces, bringing our media centers up to date, and replacing all classroom furniture. Providing robotics and STEM is an exciting key element because we would look with successful passage to build a standalone robotics and STEM facility on the current Romeo Middle School site on the top up by the tennis court. So we have a lot of parking lot area at Romeo Middle School because it used to be a high school with 500 plus drivers. Middle school kids don't drive to school, and we're going to keep it that way. And so we've got some space there where we could create a home for the Biting Bulldogs, our high school robotics team, also our middle school robotics team. But we would look to use that facility to bring in-district field trips of our elementary kids, and also with some specific summer and evening programming. Improving athletic facilities would allow us to complete the one campus, but also invest into both the Romeo Middle School site so that they would have their own facilities and not be trying to have to compete over at the high school campus, which makes it very difficult for all our teams in the fall and spring to get practices and games in. Finally, upgrading instructional technology. Technology is ever changing. So we take care of our student devices through the sinking fund, but this would be more of our infrastructure in the background. We have to stand up a second network, ransomware and things like that you hear about happening to businesses and governmental entities is also now happening to schools. So you want to have a backup network so that you could transfer over. So those are the 7 key elements, and I would just remind everybody again, our district webpage has an election tab in the top left corner. There's a variety of resources there. And as we sit 2 weeks out from the election, I just simply want to encourage everyone to plan to vote, and you can do that all the way up to election day. And I would remind everyone that our municipalities are now open the Saturday before for 8 hours. So you literally, even for our non-registered voters, you could go to your clerk's office, get registered, apply for your absentee ballot, fill it out on site and submit it, and you could take care of the whole process really in a short manner. So that's all I have for my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from the board members?
Was this always planned on being a 2-phase project?
Yes. Of course, I wasn't here when they made the original plan, but I've seen it, and it really comes down to the district trying to not have an increase to homeowners, so you only have access to so much. So back then, it was about $136 million in facility needs that they were able to accomplish, a significant portion of. Things are a little bit more expensive now in this day and age since back when they made that plan in 14.
Thank you.
You have some skilled trades programs going on. Can you enlighten us a little more on them? Neighbor of mine, the young lady, I talked to her this weekend, and she told me she was actually in the electrical courses, so
Mhm.
I think it's great.
Yeah, so our construction trades pathway in the DEM Academy at the high school really gives kids some specific coursework in their sophomore and junior years, but with an internship and some work-based learning opportunities in their senior year, they could really specialize in any trade. And we have good partners in just about all of the major ones for sure. So that, we're excited about that, and we would invest some money from a successful bond in the equipment that they have to make sure that it's up to date.
So they'll be able to go from this to their apprenticeship and possibly get their license?
Yes.
So
A lot of that is connected to Macomb Community College,
Okay.
but we also have direct providers with apprentice programs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you for the very important work that you do. Thank you for reaching out to all the municipalities and coming to these meetings. I know there's probably 100 other things that you probably should be doing, but you take time to come and offer the education to anybody who's tuning in, and it's very important. Our students deserve the best, and we appreciate the work that you're doing and keeping us all united by that school boundary, so we appreciate it.
One more item I just want to put on the radar of the board, the Chandler Street walkway. I'm sure you have heard about over time. And we went through a process back earlier this calendar year where the resident, I believe it would be just to the north, presented some information that walkway could be returned back to the homeowner. After our board passed a resolution in January to investigate that situation, and of course the legal documents were in order, we would return that to the homeowner. It ended up that the requirement is that is an heir to the Jacobs family, and the current homeowner is not. So we rescinded that resolution of the board recently, and our facilities subcommittee, we had a discussion on it, and I would like to present the opportunity to the village to take the walkway over, and we would gladly go, one of two directions, of course with the support of legal counsel, to get that approved with our board and then bring it to you, and we would keep that. It's clear that that's a resource for the folks that live in that area, and they would desire to still have access to it. Not for discussion necessarily for tonight, but I'd be happy to come back and we'll move forward with getting something legal put together so we could turn that over to the village and it could stay open and maintained, probably in maybe 7 or 8 months of the year.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll schedule a meeting and ask our attorneys to, put their thinking caps on it and draft something. Thank you. So that little mention that he just said was item number 2 from correspondence, but I just wanted to backtrack a quick second to mention the open house that our fire department is hosting. The Romeo Fire Department is holding an open house on Sunday, October 24th. I think this has been seen on social media. I make mention of it so that everybody can take a tour, and check out the state-of-the-art facilities that our excellent fire department offers us. So please feel free to join them. That's from 12 to 3. All right, moving on to the MSU Extension Gypsy Moth Spray. I received some correspondence from Terry Gibb. Just the lead email, says very briefly, Macomb sprayed over 1,650 acres with 2,700 residential properties affected, except for 2 areas. All blocks surveyed for defoliation were below 15%, with most being in the range of 0 to 5%. The goal of the program is to keep defoliation below 40%, so obviously they were extremely successful in their efforts. The report has specific details about your community. Please share this with others as you feel appropriate. And they will be starting training for the fall egg mass surveying in the next few weeks. I'm glad it's them and not me. But if anybody is interested in the full report from the MSU Extension for the work that they did, was about a $23,000 expense, but we thought it was important to make sure that we could preserve as much of our tree and greenscape as possible. So that report is available in the Village Hall. If anybody wants a copy, please contact myself or Catherine Trapp, and we'll get that to you. Okay, next up, we have public comment. Obviously, there's a room full. I'm going to limit all public comment to 3 minutes per speaker. I ask you to please be respectful, one at a time. Come up to the podium, state your name and address for Catherine taking the minutes. Who wants to go first?
If anyone would like to speak during agenda item, they can do that, correct?
At this time, we're having just public comment.
Is that a new rule?
No, that's not a new rule. That's in our rules of procedure. We have public comment.
Me first.
Yes.
Good evening, thanks for your time. My name is Carl Blanchard and I live on Dickinson Street. So, this week, Monday, was a fiasco on Dickinson Street. They were 2 months behind in doing the sidewalks. They showed up at the time school started and started ripping the sidewalks out. By the time they were pouring it, school was letting out. There were students walking through concrete. One of my neighbors couldn't access their driveway because, hey, their 4 flags are right across their driveway. No notice, they have 3 kids with all had babies. It was a huge inconvenience. Yes, they worked around it, but a little forethought and a little planning would have gone a long way to save a little bit of mayhem on my street, because there's a lot of kids walking that street. And I don't see a skid, a dump truck, and all these workers as a good thing at 8:30 in the morning. But mine looks great, thank you. So, the elephant in the room, as you well know, there was a flyer that got sent out regarding yours and other raises. I would have to say this: you have to be doing an awful lot for us to warrant a 94% pay increase. It's kind of unprecedented. I get where you're saying you want to make more than the people you're looking over, but it doesn't always happen. And just because the national study says this is what it is across municipalities, doesn't mean you deserve it. Okay, you have to really go over and above to get more than 10%. And I've seen more than 10% going clean across the board. Police chief, I get it, he protects our lives, okay? The dispatcher got 75 cents. That's a slap in the face. That's $1,400 a year. Yeah, it's more money, but you give, sorry Catherine, $4 raise. But yet you just complained about her performance a few months ago. Something doesn't add up. So I would like you to think hard and long before you give yourself, or anybody else for that matter, that substantial amount of raise. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Is this the time, I was gonna speak on the new business topic?
You can speak on whatever item you want. It's public comment. Come on up and give us your name and address.
Sure. So my name is Kurt Grover, I live at 262 First Street. So I recognize a lot of faces from before. I appreciate the time to talk. I know the topic was coming up to sell that property on First Street. There's a large block of people around those woods, and part of the reason we moved to those houses was because that was behind us. I know at one time that property did belong to actually the homeowner that lived in my house. He lost on a small amount of taxes and went into the village. Once you sell that property, you lose it forever. You know, these green spaces are kind of like a gem for the people that live there. And I appreciate you guys that represent the people that live there. So we all want it to remain the same. And it does more things than just aesthetics. You know, it's going to help absorb the water when we get these nasty rainstorms so the people on the south, at the north of it don't flood. It does a lot of things for the wildlife, and people walk their dogs around that area. So I just want you to think of the actual people that live there instead of the monetary value that you might get off taxes or just a sale. So right now, when we look at other cities, they always want to protect their green space because that brings more character to it. You know, I don't want to live in a Macomb Township where they're all packed on top of each other. I still want to keep the trees in the woods, the small amount that we have. I don't want it all to go to development and short-term thinking. So I guess that's all I wanted to say for tonight. And I'll look forward to where you guys go on that topic.
Thank you very much. All right. Let's cancel that. Anybody else wish to speak under public comment? Mr. Parker?
Yeah, on the parking ordinance,
Mm-hmm.
just as a little bit of history to remind the board, the planning commission has decided lawful when making a recommendation on the fee ordinance, I'm really not sure that it's clear as to what it means to have an expanded use. If an attorney moves out of an office and two attorneys move in, I'm not sure that that's clarified in what I read. So, given the fact that two of your boards have waffled on making a recommendation, and one of them seemed quite upset, and I know you were there and you voted on it, you might think about the $10,000 fee and the fact that the DDA voted down a $5,000 recommendation.
All right. Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening, my name is Shelley Rosso, I'm a resident of the Village of Romeo. In regards to the pay increases that were discussed, I don't disagree much with the gentleman that spoke before me, but I do want to add to that for that type of pay scale, I would expect my representatives to be present 5 days a week. Whether there's someone there on call or not, 5 days a week within a village office, I think would be acceptable. So I would appreciate it if that did happen. And I don't know when it comes time to vote for that scenario, but I hope President Malzahn that if you are included in the voting process, that you would have the integrity to abstain from that, so that you don't have a vote in whether you get your own raise or not. That's not, no one else gets a vote in their own raise, like the police chief. So I would hope you'd have the integrity to abstain from that.
Anyone else for public comment? Going once?
Yeah.
Going twice? Oh, you have something?
Yeah. So when I received the door hanger, or the elephant in the room, I was a little disappointed. There's like a lot of half-truths. Right now the president, and I don't care who's in the president position, but I don't think that the president of the Village of Romeo should be making $42 an hour. I can go to McDonald's tomorrow and get a job for $15 an hour flipping hamburgers. Well, it says depending on your qualifications and that, so. For many years, there's always been one person doing both the clerk's job and the administrator's job. Mike Lee handled that position. He took on for 4 years. This was 7 years ago. And then before that, there was one person doing both jobs. So they were getting the $35,000 for the clerk and the $30,000 for president. And that's not bad. $65,000 plus benefits. Mike did the same thing because he had a business to run 7 years ago when Ted became village president. He said, Mike, you do both jobs. I got a business to run and just take the pay. So then Christine and Catherine were elected to the positions. Now we've got two people in there. And Catherine is making $35,000, Christine's making $30,000. But this is an accumulation of a lot of years that this has never been looked at. What we had recently was a cost and wage compensation study done, which most municipalities and townships and villages do periodically to see where they're at comparably with other townships and villages around them. So that's where these numbers came from. It was an outside group that we hired to see where we're at. I mean, even with, so that's how these numbers came about. No one said, hey, I want to make this much, or I want to make this much. It was a study done, and I think at 28 an hour is still less than the president of Armada, Almont, all the surrounding areas. Our president in this town will still be making less than those people. This was just something that needed to be done. Some of the other department heads got not huge raises, but considerable raises because we need to get them bumped up to you know, we have to be competitive too. We can't be losing, you know, police officers to Rochester. We can't lose DPW workers, you know, they're trained, and that's just the bottom line. We don't want to lose our employees.
About 10 more seconds.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I knew I was going over it. So that's my point. I don't want any village president of Romeo to be making $14.42 an hour. At least be up there with all the other neighboring communities. Thank you.
Anyone else wanted to speak under public comment?
Resident.
Zach Fowler, Dickinson Street, 319 Dickinson. Regarding what Nathan just said, sure, I got one of those door hangers too. And I want to say thank you to whatever Romeo resident or residents put that out. For the last several months, we've been saying exactly that stuff here at the council meeting. And now you know what's been going on. So to those residents, we appreciate it. And to what you're saying about Christine's position, if it was a full-time position, then that would warrant it. But she was voted as a part-time. Just want to make sure that you realize it. Thank you.
Zach, who did put these on? Because these are illegal as they state.
I'll tell you what, mine would have had the doggone
If you notice,
concrete blocks on there.
you notice the
I tell you what,
schools,
and they would have had those
They
weight
print
limit signs missing out of my
fake
community, the doggone consent agreement, so it had a hell of a lot more than that. Tell
Is
you
there
what.
anybody else for public comment? All right, going once, going twice. I'm going to close this
Stuck
portion
in my-
of the public
Never
comment.
get stuck in 19.
Hey, man, I'm just saying, I still gotta look at those concrete blocks every day.
For the officers' reports, my office report of the president for October 18th. I continue to work with Paul O'Meara from Rowe Engineering for the pedestrian crosswalk project. We are nearing the end of the design and prep phase. The next steps will be to reach out to our Main and St. Clair Street businesses to gather input and plan for interruptions from the construction phase, which is scheduled for next spring. DDA Director Elizabeth Miller will be working with Paul and myself to develop a communication plan, but we welcome your input. This is a recap, by the way, of an exciting project, a $160,000 grant that was secured, and so that'll be a nice investment in our community to make our downtown more walkable in 5 areas. Romeo Floor Covering installed the new carpet squares in the main workspace and 2 offices in the Village Hall. The steps leading to the upstairs still need to be completed, but the areas done look terrific. The carpet was in there for about 27 years and had certainly served its purpose. I encourage all of you to please stop in and see the improvements. I did hold a kickoff planning meeting with our engineering firm, Hubble Roth & Clark, our building inspector, Mike Bomarito, DPW supervisor, and building administrator to discuss our new and exciting Church Street parking lot. We developed an initial plan. This should be reviewed and available hopefully next month. We'll be sending it to the Planning Commission for their opportunity to review and for their recommendations on that project. Congratulations to Kiwanis Supporter of the Year, Ruth Hedebreck. She was recognized for her outstanding dedication to the betterment of the community during the Kiwanis installation dinner last week. Congratulations to Pastor Kevin Cook for his recognition as a longtime community leader and volunteer. Thank you, Catherine Trapp, for presenting him a certificate of recognition on behalf of the Village of Romeo in my absence on October 10th. I hear your speech was smashing. The October 16th Community Shred and e-recycling day was another success. We are grateful that the rain ended and we were able to help our residents with this free event. Thank you to Bruce Township Supervisor Mike Philbrook, Romeo Clerk Catherine Trapp, Serve students Paulina Retaria, Hannah Richardson, and Caroline Lanzewski, I hope I said that right, for volunteering with me to help unload the 90-plus cars and trucks who pulled through to drop off their unwanted items. We collected over 2 tons of paper and a truckload of electronics that won't end up in a landfill somewhere over a few hours' time. Officer Linda Blevins retired from our police department on October 8th. She served this community for over 30 years, and we wish her well in her retirement. There will be a celebration for her at the Bruce Township Fire Department on October 19th. I believe that's tomorrow evening. I'm unclear of the time, so please reach out to them to double check the time. I wasn't able to decipher that today. Reminder, trick-or-treating in the business district will be October 30th from 11 to 1. The Parks and Rec will be hosting a party in the park starting at 12:30. And of course, regular trick-or-treating will begin at 6 o'clock on the 31st. Candy donations for our first responders to pass out to all of our little visitors are welcome at both our police and fire departments. James Withrow is collecting items and seeking volunteers to help serve or deliver free Thanksgiving dinner meals on Thursday, November 25th from noon to 3 p.m. Dine-in service will be at the Masonic Lodge, which is at 231 North Main Street. If you are able to make a donation, lend a hand, or know of someone in need of a delivered meal, please contact James at 586-781-7590, or you can email him at james-rithoux, R-O-U-T-H-E-A-U-X, @att.net. As always, I continue to hold regular office hours to meet with our property and business owners to address their concerns. If you have a concern, compliment, or complaint you need assistance with, please call my office, 586-752-3565. I'm at extension 3, or send me an email, president@villageofromeo.org. Thank you. All right, Clerk Chat?
Marijuana business license applications are now open. There is no end date for submissions. We get a lot of phone calls about that. The village office does ask that you call ahead before submitting your app because it does take a little bit of time for the submission process. I had the honor, as President Milzon mentioned, of presenting Pastor Kevin at River of God a certificate of recognition on Sunday, October 10th. I also wanted to thank you to Reverend Bell for including me. He organized everything. This past Saturday, the Macomb chapter of the Daughters of American Revolution in Mount Clemens honored soldier Joseph Goodwin in our cemetery, who was a Revolutionary War hero. His plaque has not been delivered yet because there was a typo and we are waiting for the new one. Also, another item from our cemetery, we will be having a cremains burial in a few weeks for a soldier named Chauncey Garfield. Yes, he is a descendant of President Garfield. His great-granddaughter reached out to me back in December of last year because she wanted to lay him to rest in his spot in the Romeo Cemetery, but she had to wait until his remains got mailed back to her from Oregon. She waited almost 10 months, and last month in September, she called to say his remains are now in Michigan. But that's not even the best part. His story of how he died in Oregon in 1939 and his remains not making it back to his family until 82 years later is featured on the Amazon Prime documentary Libraries of Dust. That is available now on Amazon Prime, and he specifically is mentioned, and he does have a headstone in our cemetery, so we are planning that and looking forward to doing that in a few weeks.
Excellent. All right. Treasurer Maddox?
Total tax collected was $2,431,258.60. Of those, internet payments that would be on the online website, 32 payments, consisting of just under 32,000. And total delinquent, outstanding tax is 180,000. 109 comes from Bruce, and Washington is just a little over 70,000, so we should be getting that by the end of the year. And I went to Macomb County last Tuesday, October 13th, and I met with the new tax officer and new balance. So are there any questions?
You said internet payments?
Yes, that's
We're protected as far as
yes.
information getting out there? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes my treasury report. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Trustees, I don't remember which side of the room I started on last time, so I'm looking in Nate's direction and we'll start over here.
Well, might as well knock out the sidewalk report or subcommittee. Well, Dickinson's done. Yeah, I went and met the guys and I said, look, you're gonna have to get by this time the kids were in school, so it was quiet for the day, and I said, you gotta get as much ripped out, you gotta get the stuff ripped out. That's the most precarious time, is when he's driving around with the forklifts and that, so they did the best they could, and then, it got done. Fortunately, there wasn't as much on Dickinson as there was the other streets, and that helped too. So, but yeah, so, looking forward to maybe getting the sidewalk across from the high school eventually taken care of too.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Trustee Polzanski?
I do have a couple things. I was able to attend the Bruce Township Planning Commission meeting and represent our residents of Romeo's wants for the future planning over there. I was also I spoke with a resident over on Prospect Street who had concern over the water with the middle school being torn down, there was damage to homes. Was able also to speak with the superintendent on that issue. Also, another resident on Dickinson Street, there's a concern over the sign that's about to be the school sign, that it's electric. Hasn't been turned on yet, but they're concerned about how bright it's going to be. Is it distracting, and can it even be in the residential area there? So I said I would bring that up. I don't know. And then lastly, I was able to give my presentation for the Master Citizen Planner to our Planning Commission meeting. It had to be 20 minutes long, so I thank them for listening to me speak on a very exciting topic, not really, for 20 minutes. So I should be getting that credential soon. I turned in my information, so that is it.
Thank you.
I don't really have anything, but can I ask you a question? Was there any resolution to the water issue there when you talked to the superintendent?
They did, actually, the day that we all got, well, trustees and whatever, we all got an email.
Right.
I did go out that day. I took pictures, video. They were out there putting in a second fence that was taller. However, my understanding is it's not about how tall the fence is, it's about how deep it is. So I did see them, tearing the trench and putting it in. And then it did rain the next few days, and I went back to look. It held in most places, but again, I took a few more pictures. If it caved more so on the ends, they did put some hay bales there to try and reinforce, but the water just seemed to go right under it,
Because they did, because I have been, obviously it's right down the street from my house, so I go by it all the time, and I've been checking after the rains.
Yeah.
To see if anything like that's reoccurring.
Yeah, you can see the veining on the sidewalk and down where all the dirt, it is coming down. But, and I mean, it made its way all the way down to Church Street in front of the post office.
It takes a hard left at Church Street. It doesn't go down to Main Street. It takes a hard left at Church.
But no,
It goes down
definitely
Church
they were on it, taking care of it. So I appreciated that. But the residents are just very concerned in the damage, the water that was building up. So
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
I have nothing.
Anything? Justin, anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to, for the residents that were asking me, I did reach out to Ruth at the Met for an update on the park improvement project and where the funds were, and just over a month ago, I emailed her, and I just want to let her know I haven't got a response yet. That's it.
Nothing from me, but I'll do the ex officio.
Okay.
As far as the planning commission,
Sure.
we had a short agenda. We extended the request for the Bailey Street project, the medical building. And that's about it.
Okay, perfect. Moving on, committee reports. As Nathan just mentioned, the sidewalk subcommittee. We currently have 3 committees, just to recap: the sidewalk, the rental inspection subcommittee, Bruce Sewer Capacity Subcommittee. We'll just give a brief update to the rental inspection subcommittee, if you would like, Justin. He was able to organize a meeting attended by Mr. Parker, Nikki Chaika, Zach.
Myself.
Yes.
And yeah. And then,
Unavailable was Mike Bomarito. He had some confusion in his planning.
yeah.
But
Well, that was, I think, the main guy that should have been there. That's who we wanted to get some info from. But I think between your conversation with him, my conversation with him, I think we came to the conclusion that we just need to maybe tighten up the ordinances we do have in place and give him more authority, if that's the correct term, to enforce those ordinances moving forward.
Yes.
And I think we decided probably recommend tabling the rental inspection ordinance at this time.
Yes.
Do you know the number of non-owner occupied residents there are in the village? How many properties are we talking about
Do we know that, Mr.
that would
Parker?
qualify?
We couldn't get that.
Pardon?
I
You
didn't.
guys didn't look at that?
I wasn't
I
able
think
to.
there, I think you guys mentioned under a dozen.
Under a dozen is what was suspected.
Under 12?
Under 12
Okay.
that were
Well,
non.
They're significantly more than that, because Sherry, the treasurer Maddox ran me a report at one
sure you got that.
point. Yeah, I don't remember the number off the
I
top
mean,
of my
is it,
head, but.
is there 100 or is there
I
12?
thought, my recollection
Yeah.
is there was like
100?
140.
It's a lot more than you think.
We were just talking single family
Yes.
residential,
Well, non-owner occupied.
non-owner, single
Correct.
family.
Oh, it shouldn't have to be just single family.
That's what was in question for the ordinance, was the single family, not multi-tenant, not commercial, not industrial. That was,
Wouldn't it?
The original
Yeah, I think any
intent.
residence, even if it's multi-family residence, should fall under that, not industrial,
I'm
not
not disagreeing,
commercial.
but was not what was brought up for the inspection. They
Just
wanted
to-
to focus on, the initial intent, we were told, was to focus on the single family, non-owner occupied or family occupied or whatever it was, dwellings.
In previous meetings that Mark was able to attend, we took a look at the blight ordinance. We had a blight ordinance drafted, we had the rental inspection ordinance drafted. We also have a dangerous building ordinance that's already on the books. And we really felt, after discussing it further with our building inspector, Mike Bomarito, he thought that there was enough language in both of those, maybe to revamp the blight and dangerous building ordinance, that he would be able to utilize his time better just to enforce. He's semi-retiring from Washington Township, so he'll be available to us more. And so we can start there versus putting in place a rental inspection program at this time that would be cumbersome, just to maintain that flow.
Because
So,
the question I would have is, as far as having access to the inside of some of these homes, because
Yes.
I'm subject to that with some rentals, and it actually, sometimes it's a pain, but it is a good thing because things are kept up, and the properties in the street are kept up. And the thing that really brought this to point is the house that's across from the middle school. And for 10 years that had been like that, everybody knew what the outside would be, I guess, if you're thinking dangerous because bricks might be falling, but nobody had an idea of what was happening inside of that home.
correct.
And that's where I think, sometimes if you feel that if the exterior has some indications that would allow someone to take the next step to have an interior inspection, that might be good. But even just smoke detectors and things like that, because if a person is a non-owner, sometimes many take care of the property and care, and they would do that. Other ones really, they don't live in the area, they just rent it, they don't care. And it's not until something happens that you look at that. So, for those reasons, I'm in favor of at least doing our due diligence. And if there was 12 properties, that's not, if we have 100, I think that's something we should look at seriously.
Well, let me go
We were
back
gonna
and
look at
clarify that.
all
tabled for
multifamily,
now, so.
commercial,
Well, I wouldn't,
any
commercial,
rental, just any across the board. If we're concerned about occupants,
yeah,
we'd
I
want
think,
to, we'd want to encompass that across the board, like I've seen in many municipalities that I
Yeah.
work with, so that's how they do it.
the only thing I would say within commercial is, businesses have a little bit maybe more choice of where, if things aren't done, hey, I'm gonna be out of here. I mean, not in every kind of case, but a lot of times with people living in a residence, they may be afraid to say something. They might say something, but they're afraid they're gonna get kicked out. They don't have maybe other
If it's
options.
a rental, it's falling back on the owner of that building, not so much the business that's there.
What I'm saying, and I'm not as concerned about businesses and commercial, because a business can choose to stay in a place maybe have more latitude than an individual might have. You can have a single mom that's,
I know we just had that major fire right off Apollo Road because there wasn't an inspection done on the setup that was done inside.
well,
So I'd be concerned, if we're gonna do it, we might as well be concerned about all occupants, not just picking and choosing.
the thing that in Sterling Heights, Warren, the ones that have that is for the non-owner home, rentals of homes. I'm not sure what they do industrial. I'm not saying we shouldn't inspect those things, but I don't think they all have to be, wrapped together. It's more,
Okay.
Yes,
I think that one's-
well, Mike Bomarito did feel like in the dangerous buildings ordinance and the blight ordinance that he did have the latitude.
inside.
I believe so. but I will verify that with him, yes.
But even smoke detectors, you know?
I know,
mean,
it's needed. That's why I drafted and wanted the draft of that rental inspection ordinance to move it forward. I understand that there are some concerns, over, extended family who may rent from another family member. But just moving back to his recommendation to, let's take a look at the blight, the dangerous building ordinance, see if that takes care of these issues, and if not, then we'll bring the rental inspection ordinance back at another time. So I think that was the recommendation of the subcommittee that we were going to
review
table it in.
those ordinances for alterations, changes?
Yes,
Okay, good.
yes. Well, I'll review them with Mike and bring back another version if that's what we need to do.
Maybe if Mike could even come to him when we're doing that, talk to him, maybe answer some questions to the board, or
I can
he'd be
ask him.
willing to do that.
I can certainly ask him, yeah. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to make a motion to remove or dissolve the sidewalk subcommittee and the rental inspection subcommittee.
Support.
I think, okay.
And then bring them back, like the sidewalk will be brought back in the spring, so just take it off the agenda.
Right, I don't know that we need to have a subcommittee anymore. We have a process
Gotcha.
in place, we're refining the place, it's mostly administrative. I couldn't have done it without Nathan's assistance. He continues to help me with that, and I think he's willing to continue that, but I don't know that we need a subcommittee, since we already have the process in place.
Got it.
And so I'd like to just remove that subcommittee, and then the rental inspection subcommittee, if we need to bring it back, we will.
Okay.
But I don't know that it needs to be a
you
placeholder
still
on
need
our
support?
agenda anymore.
Do you have support?
Support?
No. Okay, Nathan made the motion.
Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
I'm sorry, excuse me, Madam President, can you just clarify that was the sidewalk committee and the rental inspection committee?
Yes. So we'll just keep the sewer capacity subcommittee active. All right, let's move on to unfinished business, the middle school sidewalk. It's just really just more for information. You have in your packet a copy of the plan, the aerial view from HRC. We were really working to get some estimates in place. The project's a little more complicated than initially thought because of the drawing, where the easements are in place, that the sidewalk would extend through the asphalt that runs in front of Malberg's Funeral Home and in that horseshoe that's in St. Paul's Episcopal Church. So HRC is working on a bid packet, and so we will get that and then bring that for approval on the bid packet. Hopefully we can get that done over the winter months, and then we'd be ready to have this installed first thing in the spring. I was really, really hoping that we could get that put in this fall. We were able to secure the easements for $1. Thank you for that work. Nathan really went out of his way to make contact, and then Catherine ran them over to the county to get them all filed. So we're all set with that. So in case anybody needs any clarification, I have the drawing. The green sidewalk it will make a slight jog. It'll run from Bradley Street at the 33-foot right-of-way along the front of the Malberg's Funeral Home, just to his western property line. Then it will make a jog back to a 66-foot right-of-way, which will line up on the other end with the sidewalk that's at the Copperwood Commons subdivision. So walkers from that area will meet up with the 5-foot sidewalk, and then there'll be a connector in the middle of that horseshoe driveway. There's a small island. It lines up with the light and the crosswalk that's already installed there at 33 Mile Road. So there'll be another sidewalk for them to cross with that light. And that's the plan. So just information on that. That's where that project stands. Moving forward, very exciting. I also did touch base with Mr. Robinson on that. He will take it to his sinking fund committee to see where their funding level could be. He agrees that that sidewalk really does serve his students. Although I don't know why the sidewalk was never installed in that area to begin with, since the whole village has pretty much sidewalks and it escaped. But so I'm looking forward to partnering with them so they can have a cost share in that project. Okay, item B, unfinished business, is the parking ordinance. I drafted this ordinance, and as Mr. Parker alluded to, we took this to Planning Commission before. We took this to the DDA. I believe Village Council looked at a version of a parking ordinance. And no one really wanted to take ownership of this. As you know, parking is a problem in the village, in the central business district. Although it could boil down to an enforcement issue, parking has not been enforced for years and years. There is no metering system, obviously, and the court is saying that you can't really mark tires anymore, so not having an enforcement officer to drive around, it's a bit of a problem. We do have changeover in ownership in our downtown. We have an applicant that has come before, or will be coming before, the Zoning Board of Appeals, asking for a variance. The use that they would like calls for more parking than what they have adjacent to their property. Therefore, they have a certificate of occupancy issued. They need to show more parking. Other communities use this payment in lieu of, you've heard that term before, as an alternative method so that they, a landowner can purchase into a bank and then be given the allocations that they need for their building use. So the ordinance that you have in front of you, I reached out to Rochester. This is modeled after Rochester's. And the fee that I'm recommending on the back page would be approved separate from the ordinance. The ordinance has language includes that council may adjust the fee, which is why it's separate. It would be part of our normal fee schedule that we do, and that could change from time to time. But that fee of $10,500 came from the work that HRC has already provided to me for the Church Street parking lot. So we have an initial cost of what it's going to take to develop that, roughly about $95,000 to turn that into a parking lot. That doesn't include any aesthetics necessarily. If we decided to do brick columns or some sort of fencing, that's not included in the initial projections. That's his initial projection for what that cost is. I'm sorry?
Does it include lights?
It does not include lights at this time. There's one street lamp. I did have a request from a neighboring resident who said, please don't put lights there, because they didn't want lights to shine on his
house. Yeah.
Yes, but it does include a small sidewalk. There's no sidewalk on that side of the street. Yes, and so we would use the existing right-of-way to connect that sidewalk across the front of that resident so that we could then hop right into the village park. So there'll be a safe way to either get on Church Street or up Rawls. We also did talk about expanding that parking lot if we consider changing Rawls to a one-way street, Rawls and Newberry. We can gain an additional 8 parking spaces if Rawls was one way, either north or south, and we can look at a study for that, because you can use the right-of-way and not only bump out the parking lot, you would gain more from the on-street parking in a angled instead of parallel parking configuration, which I think would help. There's some dangerous intersections there. If anybody's ever tried to either turn at Masonic Temple, you kind of have that weird little creep out into the intersection. You also can't really access by the old Village Winery location onto Rawls because the parking lot is so tight on Rawls for where that municipal lot dumps out to. So something really to be considered.
My concern would be if we're looking at $10,500 per parking space and it gets us 8, let's just be rough numbers, 80 grand. As long as it benefited our cost, then that's definitely something to look into.
Right. It actually is going to vet out 12 spaces in that parking lot configuration. There were a couple of different routes that we looked at, one driveway, one access point versus 2, and how wide the space would be between the rows. So it would be parking along Church Street and then parking to the rear of where the wooden fence is at that house right now, with just one access point. So HRC calculated we could get 12 spaces out of that municipal lot and then an additional 6 or 7 spaces onto Rawls.
Okay.
You mentioned the 2 buildings downtown that are going to do some renovations with the condos and the lack of parking that they have. Were you going to use this overnight parking to, in lieu of them being short of their
Well, that was one of the items that I talked to Mr. Casson about, because the proposed use would be for a short-term rental, an Airbnb or another resident. If they were to just convert them into apartments per se, that would require overnight parking for somebody who lives there. And right now, there is no overnight parking in that quadrant.
Correct, but they're short. They're short of parking spaces. If they want to do the two units per building,
Correct.
they need 2 spots per unit.
Correct, they would not. So we would, in theory, have this ordinance in place. They would be able to pay into that fund. We would use those funds to develop not only the Church Street parking lot, we have another opportunity to develop a parking lot that's on Bailey Street and Lafayette, hopefully in partnership with the Romeo Lions that have talked to me about that project. And then there's maintenance. There's just general maintenance all the time that happens. Everything has to be swept and landscaped and cared for. So if we had an ongoing fund, it would help offset some of those tax dollars that we have to use when it's really the business owners and their tenants that are, you know, are needing that parking. 'Cause
Yeah, they're making money off the
you're all
tenants,
parking
so,
in your own driveway, so.
These are taxpayers' dollars that we're spending for the parking, they obviously have to pay if they don't provide this parking space for their tenants.
Correct. Yep.
And how would it work? Would they pay this in full before they get their permit sort of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Where did the number, how was that generated?
The 10,500 came from discussions that I had with Hubble, Roth, and Clark, and the initial projections for the cost of taking that Church Street lot and making parking. Today's cost, what it would actually cost us, and that this is the average.
Okay.
It's also in line with what the other communities do, Rochester, and I believe, I don't know if it's Birmingham or if it's Bloomfield.
And
There
it's
were
a
several that we
one-time
looked
fee.
at. It's a one-time fee, yep, per parking space. It stays with the use. So if the building sells and there's another use that comes in there, they don't get the money back if it's less. But if it requires more parking for their new use, then they would have the opportunity to buy additional spaces.
And there's a lot of buildings that are non-conforming for parking. Gray's Opera House, I think, has 2 parking spaces. So if that were to ever change, not that it is, but, yeah, 2 spaces. So you need to have this type of thing.
Well,
for
and the
our
other
village.
catalyst to bring this forward was, as Zach mentioned, the extension for Vito Pamploma's medical building on Bailey Street. He was approved to utilize the Bailey Street parking lot for his required spacing for his intended uses for the build-out. We didn't have the number in place. That's actually what started this whole discussion of the payment in lieu of, but he has not built out yet. COVID delayed him, right? He's waiting until he actually has a tenant that's committed before he proceeds with that project. So he brought it back to ask for an extension of his permit and approvals for demo and whatnot. The approval at the Planning Commission was for a parking lot maintenance agreement. If you recall, we talked about that instead, because we didn't have the payment in lieu of in place, that he was going to put something together and offer to care for that as a trade-off at the time. He had some concerns over liability issues, you know, if he's responsible for salting and plowing a public, you know, municipal parking lot, then he's on the hook for liability for slip and falls, and I can see that it's problematic. So I just simply mentioned at the Planning Commission meeting that I was hoping to bring this forward, get it approved, and then we'd have an option that he could either do an agreement or just utilize the payment in lieu of.
So you're looking for a motion?
I guess my concern.
Or at least some input on.
Yeah, I guess one concern that jumps up, if we're gonna start charging 10,500 per spot, we've got one lot that we're planning on developing, and then the development that's going in behind Town Hall, the Village Hall, there, we're not adding any parking there. So if we're gonna be charging, are we not just cramming more cars into the same parking, the same amount of parking? So if we're gonna charge them, shouldn't we be able to tell them, this is what we're planning for your area?
Well, as plans change, right, as buildings come, as buildings go, we don't have a significant turnover of use in our central business district. So it's not like we're gonna get an application every month, right, for our downtown. But you certainly hope to plan, right? I have asked the DDA and they have agreed to fund a small parking study in the central business district that would help us identify private spaces, public spaces, have an inventory of how many spaces do we actually have, so that we can then look, if there becomes a need, we can look at the village or the municipality purchasing those private spaces if one of the landowners was willing to have revenue generated in trade to add that to our parking bank. there are ways that you can move this forward. My crystal ball isn't, perfect for
Yeah,
what we need 10 years from now.
I'd like to know what we have, like you said, with the DDA study going on. We don't even currently know how many spots we have and what we're charging for, and even off the usage map that we got today from the DDA plan, several of those are wrong. A lot of those are now restaurants, and where they're showing office. So are we utilizing more parking now than even what was based off that plan? So I'd just like to see a little bit more information.
So we can certainly look to
before we
clean
make
all that up to answer those questions. But again, it's just a tool in the toolbox that gives us an option. If we don't have an ordinance that's on the books, then we can't put it into play. If we don't have a fee associated with the ordinance, then it's a missed opportunity for the village
I
to
can
do
respect that, but
that.
I'm pretty sure the current zoning ordinance that encompasses that says that you have to have a plan in place for that money if you're gonna acquire it.
Correct.
So if we've got the one lot going on up there, and we're gonna utilize that with the condos or whatever's going on in the north end, then if we're gonna charge people on the south end, we should be able to be telling them, yes, this is what we're gonna provide for you with 10,500 per required spot. I mean, 10 spots if required for a restaurant.
Well,
That's
I think it's like you're increasing the use so that they're gonna share in the cost, if more parking, you get more deterioration, I don't know what those are, but when Hans Financial was coming in, I think they wanted to initially go to 2 stories, and I think the number at that point they were gonna charge them for parking was $8,000, and that was probably, 2003, 2005, so the number was $8,000 back then. So 10.5, just based on that, seems like a good
I'm not
estimate.
opposed to the number per se, I just, based on our zoning ordinance and how it's written, it says that you have to have anticipated acquisition and development.
Yes, and so we do have that with the Church Street parking lot going on. As I mentioned,
For
there's
X
another
amount of spots, right?
there's another opportunity in another quadrant that we're looking to develop, along with this ordinance, which is the first step. Our village planner, Steve Casson, is helping me draft the zoning amendments that support this document. So those zoning amendments would be viewed by the planning commission, and then a recommendation for adoption coming for that. But until we have this plan in place, we can't adjust the zoning ordinance to yes.
So I'd like
They
to
have
make,
to support each other.
I'd like to make a motion
If
that
I
we.
could, I'm sorry, I
Sure.
apologize for interrupting, but you may be farther along than you think you are. If you look at your zoning ordinance now, there is a provision, it's in section 46.3.14. You have a provision that allows for parking in lieu of, or a payment in lieu of, payment in lieu of the parking spaces in the central business district. It's on your, it's in your ordinances now. So you may be farther along than you may have anticipated. It requires approval of the village council to first accept that, okay, this is what we'd like to do, a payment in lieu of, based on a recommendation of the planning commission. And it specifies that the fund is to be used for purchasing off-site parking. It's got to be a dedicated fund, which is in your proposed ordinance, but I think it's already on the books. The amount is to be set by the engineer, which, as Mrs. Malzahn said, that's the source of the number that she's included in this draft ordinance. And it has to be approved by the village, and it sets forth the number of parking spaces that, if you will, can be purchased. For instance, general commercial uses 1 space for every 500 square feet and so forth. It's got a listing or a description in there. So you may already have, I think you do, but it's subject to your determination because you're the ones that consider and adopt the ordinances, amend ordinances, repeal existing ordinances. I think you already have the framework in place. If you look at that provision in your zoning ordinance, you may just need to structure the payment. It also provides, if you choose, that you can enter into an agreement with somebody purchasing parking in lieu of providing the actual spaces for payment over time and interest rate and so forth, because not everybody may be able to plunk down the per space fee, but yet it may still be a good idea. And so you have the ability to work with somebody that may want to make a payment in lieu of the actual parking, but structure that over some time and with some payment of interest. So as part of your consideration, and I apologize, Mr. Bartholomew, for interrupting you, but I didn't want you to get too far down the road in this consideration and then have me say, oh, by the way, and you asked me, well, why didn't you tell us that before? So I just would suggest as part of your consideration that you look at what you have now and see if it's sufficient. If it is, then you amend it or revise it to reflect more specific circumstances. If it's insufficient, then you can address a more comprehensive ordinance that you have before you this evening.
That
What
was-
So can we
I'm
look
sorry.
at tabling then until we have all the information?
Well,
So-
that's up to you.
Well,
Yeah.
if we're looking at putting a price, would the planning commission have a voice in that? Like 10.5 sounds like a good starting number. Would we ask planning
We
commission?
did. I did ask
Oh,
the
you
planning
did.
commission and the DDA. Both
Okay.
of them weren't comfortable in setting a number. So they asked that village council set
Set
that
the number.
number.
And your current ordinance requires the ordinance, or requires the fee to be set by the village. It says, the amount of the required fee shall be established by the village engineer and shall be based on anticipated acquisition and development costs. Payment in lieu of may be paid in annual installments with interest thereon upon such terms and conditions as may be approved by the village council. So you have that ability now to do that. You just have to set that amount or set whatever the terms might be. And they might not, the amount should be the same for everybody, but the terms might not be. There may be people that want to take their overhead costs right off the top and pay that fee up front. There might be others who want to spread that over some time that might be acceptable to the village, but ultimately it would be your choice as to the approval.
Yeah, thank you. That was one I had written down, if we had discretion in the way that we crafted that, because I was thinking that too. I would hate to dissuade people from coming here if they need 10 parking spaces, if there was a way to, half down or however, so that's good to know. My other question was, the fund that we would set this money into, will it be restricted to only parking, or will it fall under the ability to pull it out and use it for other things?
No, it's specific in this ordinance. Funds derived from payments in lieu of providing off-street parking shall be deposited by the village in a special parking fund, which shall be used and expended exclusively for any or all of the following: planning, designing, acquiring, maintaining, and/or developing off-street parking facilities located insofar as practical within the general downtown area.
But do we
So it's
have that
pretty
in the
specific.
current one?
In
That's
the
what I'm-
current one, it's not as
Okay,
tight
that's what
as
I'm-
that one. The current one says that the money would be paid to a fund in lieu of parking. The fund shall be used for purchasing land and developing consolidated parking spaces in the central business district. So you have a threshold requirement in your existing ordinance. It's not as tight or as specific as what's being proposed.
So should we rescind the old one maybe and then put this new one in?
Well, you should do what,
Is that what you want?
you're the policymakers, you
I
should
would just
do
amend what we have at the
what you
moment.
think is appropriate. All I'm saying is you have something on the books now that addresses in part, some might say addresses in whole the issue, but in any event, you have something. The question becomes, do you want to revise it? Do you want to amend it? The policy decisions are always yours, and so how you go about doing it, as long as it's a lawful procedure, which it will be, it doesn't matter. You can adopt the new ordinance, or you can amend your existing one. If you're gonna adopt the new one, I would suggest and recommend that you put it, like the current one, you put it in your zoning ordinance, as opposed to the street sidewalks and other public spaces. If you look at that set of ordinances in chapter 38, it doesn't really talk about parking. It doesn't really talk about parking lots and parking spaces. It does talk about public spaces and sidewalks and so forth. So you could put it there. I just think it's probably not the best place to put it in terms of trying to apply the ordinances throughout the village, I think the zoning ordinance is probably the better location, but that should not be determinative.
That was the recommendation that came from village planner Steve Casson to amend chapter 38, streets, sidewalks, and other public spaces,
Right.
and then he's working for the zoning amendments based off that
And
recommendation.
Christine, the prospect of the parking that is held by the Lions, is that within the DDA district?
It would,
I think it's outside,
I
right?
think it's outside.
So
It's across the
you should
street from-
remove, it should be expanded beyond the DDA.
It just says within the general downtown area.
Right, and our
Right.
current one
Your
is
current one
within the
says the
DDA.
central business district.
So we need to correct that.
And just
Are we
if I
gonna-
might,
expand
If we revise this and table it and come back next month with more information, everything tightened up, are we gonna lose out on anything?
Yes, there will be 2 zoning, appearances, at the ZBA the first Thursday of November, and where their applications will be reviewed by those bodies.
Within the DDA?
Yes.
All right, so we could give, what you need is the dollar amount? Or do you need that whole ordinance?
Right. I'm still unclear what you want to tighten up, what your recommendation for input is, because the
Well, I think-
way that it's drafted, right, it's both amending the ordinance to allow for this to be included, and then we'll send to the planning commission the zoning amendments to support this, as well as the fee.
What I'm hearing is we agree that there is the need to make provision for not having the parking. The dollar amount is pretty much put together by, so, I mean, whether you wanna play with that a little bit, but that sounds like we have that, so.
So our current ordinances allows us to establish the fee.
Yes, it does. But it's
And
not
it's-
clear on where it's going and what specifically it's used for, which was the original concern when we brought this idea forward. And then I think that you were the one that mentioned at the last discussion was, well, how does that work? What is, does it stay with the use? Does it stay with the building? Do they get their money back?
There was
What if
some conversation
Yes.
on that. And
This
that the
ordinance
engineer
should
needed to
define all of
establish.
those concerns.
Yeah. More so we were concerned then about, because you were just asking for recommendation, and our ordinances had stated that it was supposed to come from the engineer. That was.
Mark, have you read this?
I have.
Okay, and it's pretty solid? I mean, do you have any concerns with it?
Well,
it
as
is?
I mentioned, it wouldn't be my recommendation to put it in chapter 38, but again, that is not fatal to the ordinance itself. And my concern generally would be that you may have essentially 2 ordinances on your books that address the same subject matter. You have the existing provision in your zoning ordinance for payment in lieu of parking, and then you'll have this separate ordinance. They both address the same subject matter. They say basically the same thing, but they're not exactly the same.
Right.
And so if you're going to adopt,
One will rescind the other.
I think you should speak with one voice and not have 2 separate ordinances dealing with the same subject that don't say the exact same thing. That's,
And just for clarity, what is that number, since you have it in front of you? What would we be repealing?
it's 46-314.
Okay.
So if we agree on the dollar amount now, based on what we have, we can move forward with that for what we've got coming up, and then, again, I'll use the word tighten up again. I don't
Yeah,
know if
that's what I like, is the tightening up of where the
Tighten.
funds are going.
Yeah, and then we can address the current ordinance with the new ordinance, and
Yep.
just kind of
But put it in the right chapter and so on and so forth.
make everything.
But I do think if you choose, you can set the fee tonight. You can
Yeah.
do that so that as people come under the existing ordinance, if that in fact occurs where people are asking to make a payment in lieu of, that you would have the ability to do that because you will have set the fee if that's what you choose to do.
Based on the current zoning ordinance, we can approve the fee. I like that.
you see, does that work?
Do we have a motion though, right now?
I just need to be clear what exactly you want me to tighten up.
I like
Because
the
what I hear-
adding of the language that was in here, but not
Right,
in
or where
there.
the funding's going. and-
Yeah,
In this special parking fund.
Yes.
yes, have that added to the current, that's what I,
Yeah, work this into the current zoning.
But is that gonna be down, because we have to remove it, the restriction of being within the DDA district as well?
Well,
Are
Well,
you
it's in
gonna
the
correct
central
it?
business district, it's not just in the.
This
DD.
one is, but, okay, central business, it's not.
Your existing ordinance is central
My
business.
concern is that Lions property, is that within the, that's also, we wanna expand it to be able
It's
to.
across the street from it.
But
Yeah.
without looking at the zoning map, I
Yeah,
couldn't tell
I
you.
think it's
but-
on the other side.
But I can tell you, your existing ordinance is limited to the central business
Right.
district. So if
So
you want
that'll have to be
If you
fixed.
want to expand the payment in lieu of, you can do that. And again, my recommendation would be to do it in the zoning ordinance, but you don't have to. The placement is not fatal. I think it lends to clarity or causes lack of clarity, but it's not fatal to the substance of the ordinance.
Okay, so then do we have a motion to approve the fee of $10,500 per space?
I'll make the motion that we do that.
I'm sorry, did we already have your original motion?
I never.
No,
Okay,
I'm
okay.
sorry,
I
I
just wanna make sure.
interrupted, I
Okay.
apologize.
I know, that was a
again.
good thing. It's probably a good thing for now.
Support.
Will that give you enough for what we have coming up as far as the meeting?
It's certainly a good start,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
It's just the
It
funds
will allow
part
the
is
ZBA
restricted.
at least a little more latitude to approve the use, because I wouldn't want to prevent somebody from, developing the property that they own. It's a legit, use, and it's a great investment in our community. We just need to make sure that it doesn't create other problems for the existing businesses and, people in the surrounding area that's already tight for parking, so.
and if I just may throw it out there, there is a property for sale next to Mark's current building. Just throwing it out there is something that is very close to that parking lot where all the restaurants are. If we want to look at that price of that building.
And I'm not sure that parcel is in the central business district, it could be, again, without looking at the zoning map.
It's in the
You're right.
DDA.
I think
It's in the but the
Yeah, but I don't know
DDA
if
is
it's,
not the same
yeah,
as
central, yeah.
the central
But just
business district. There's a
throwing it out
great
that-
overlap, but it's not, they're not identical.
That could be a spot, and the next spot to be looking into, it to go along with what you were saying, forward thinking that sort of spot.
Acquisitions, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and support on the table for the $10,500 payment in lieu of fee.
To be added to the current zoning?
It's just added to our fee schedule. It's
And it
just, right.
your current zoning ordinance allows you to set that fee, so you're not amending, at this point, you're not amending an ordinance, you're just
Okay.
acting pursuant to your existing ordinance.
Thank you.
Uh,
I'll second.
No, we already have support.
Okay.
Matt supported that. Do you want to call a roll on that, please?
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Edwards,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Krasinski,
Yes?
President Melton.
Yes.
Motion carries, motion approved.
Okay, moving on, wages, wastewater treatment plant. Just to recap, after last month, and we reviewed all of the wage recommendations, there was some latitude made for our DPW supervisor who spoke on his own behalf. And I was approached by our wastewater treatment plant supervisor, Al Lapierre, to be given an opportunity to do the same. So, you have in your packet his letter that he submitted. Al, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Good evening. I feel like I'm swim up against the current tonight, but I feel I need to do this anyways. Last month, I didn't come prepared to ask for more than Christine was offering. I didn't think that was appropriate to come here and do that. So I wasn't prepared to do anything about it. I did speak up a little bit because I was afraid to get left behind. In the end, I feel like I did get left behind, significantly behind my peers. So I went back, did a little study myself, and called around a bit. I think we've got a paper that I put together with some local prices, local wages. On top of that, I did get, after I gave that to Christine, I did get a call back from the folks in Holly. You remember Holly was the only comp we used to set my wage. It was also the one we used to set the DPW director's wage, the one he wanted to use. Found out what was going on. There was a big difference between the DPW director and the wastewater plant. I couldn't understand what that is. If you look at all the other local ones, they're all at the same. DPW and wastewater, they're at the same. Come to find out that the wastewater supervisor was only been there about 2 years. He didn't have any management experience, so they made him hourly. They put him in the union, made him hourly, and gave him overtime. And they put him under the DPW director. So that's why he's making $40 an hour, because he's running 2 departments. The other guy's hourly in the union. The only thing he's doing different than the other union guys is he's signing the state reports because he has the appropriate license. So, to go forward, if you look at the prices out there, the rates that I gave you for Alma, it's a 0.47 million gallon a day plant. He's right now about $1 less than me. If you look at the Imlay City, which is a 0.9 million gallon a day plant, right now he's about $1 above me.
Just for the audience's clarification, can you tell us how big your plant is?
2.2 million gallons. We are the largest plant in the area. We're larger than Baltimore. We're larger than Richmond. One plant's Lapeer is 2.3. Elginak is 2.7. Marysville is 2.3. And then, of course, you're on my first spot. But we're the biggest leader. So I have a bigger budget. I have more personnel. I do all these things that the other folks don't do. And like I said, I know that I'm swimming against the current tonight. But I ask your support to make what Tim's making, which is $37 an hour. And I think the numbers that I put there bear that out. Where the wastewater supervisor and DPW make virtually the same in these other towns. Plus the size of our plant. I'm asking your support. Thank you. Any questions?
No.
You know what I do? I have a question. Sure. Does that include a vehicle?
No.
And, okay, so,
Yeah,
and Tim's does include a vehicle, right? Yes.
Yes, and I'm on call 24/7, and I'm responsible for coming in
I'm just asking.
24/7.
I'm just asking.
365.
All I'm doing.
Yes, and so is Al.
I guess I'd like to make a motion to go with Al's recommendation and go with $37 an hour.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Edwards, we have support by Fowler. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Edwards,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Bartholomew,
Yes.
Wozniacki,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
President Belzant,
Yes?
and Parker.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Al. It's well-deserved. Moving on to new business, we have the 2022 through 2037 Romeo Downtown Development Authority Plan update. You heard the presentation, you heard public input before. The DDA did vote to send this to us for adoption. Is there a
I'll
motion
make a
to adopt
motion
that
to
document?
adopt the plan.
We have a motion by Hart, we have support by Bartholomew. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. Thank you for your time. I want to give you, before you leave, let me just give you these, this email and document here, so you can note them. Thank you.
Leave these extra plans, or just on the table here.
Okay.
Grab some extras.
I'll take them to the village office if anybody stops in to get them. All right. Al, you're back up for the wastewater treatment plant valve purchase.
Good thing you came up
A
first on the.
trickle-down
before
valve,
you asked
right?
for
Yes.
money on your valve.
Mhm.
Okay, so there is a valve on our trickling tower. Our trickling tower is the big tower in front of the plant. It has plastic media in it. We run it has zoological growth, microscopic organisms that live on the plastic. We run water over the top of it, let it trickle down, and it gets clean. To maintain the zoological growth, we have to have at least 1 million gallons a day flowing through that tower constantly. We have recirculation valves that make, when the flow goes down much below 1 million gallons, we recirculate the flow. That valve is broken. I have only one quote because it's been an emergency, and this is the manufacturer's rep. So we get the same valve back in, so it's a manufacturer's rep. If anybody else we did go to, they would have to come to these folks anyways. So since it is an emergency, I'm asking tonight for the ability to spend $7,795 on this 10-inch valve. There's a picture in there, pretty large valve. I've got my foot next to it, so you can see how big it is.
I'd like to make the motion that we move forward with the purchase of this valve for our wastewater treatment, for the amount of $7,795.
Support.
We have a motion by Bartholomew, we have support by Hart. Any other discussion?
I appreciate all the detail and all the information that you provided. This is nowhere near my wheelhouse, and seeing the diagrams and the descriptions helps me understand what in the world we're paying for, so I appreciate that.
Roll call, please.
Bartholomew?
Yes?
Hart?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
President Malzahn?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Poznanski?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. All right. Happy valve replacing, Al. Okay, next up, item C, the President's Ordinance. As you know, the amount was approved last month by this board, and it was a requirement of the general village law that it be presented in ordinance format. There are only 2 positions within the general village law that require ordinance to set the salaries, which would be that of the president and that of the trustees. The clerk and the treasurer are set by motion, resolution of the board, not by ordinance. So, just to clarify why you have that in front of you tonight. Is there any discussion?
So I had sent an email about Friday to get a copy of our original amendment. I wanted to compare, the language that was approved in 2018. Justin never even saw it. I didn't get a reply to that, so I called today to try and find, okay, well, if I can't find the original ordinance, then let's see the affidavit of when they went into place. I didn't end up getting that, but my issue is, other than this council that was at the time, that the first, and we just recently amended it for the amount of meetings recently in the last couple months, nobody besides this council has ever even seen this. So I had asked, it was many months ago, we talked about our ordinance books being up to date and that we could ask for inserts because the Muni Code online is not up to date. So I went online. It still is not up to date. It still just talks about the per meeting that the president should get. So then I went into my packet. Okay, well, it should be in here. So I have the November 2020 updated packet, and it still only says the original president pay of the meeting pay. So the people have never seen or had a chance to, unless they walked in the door and asked for it, this ordinance ever being amended. If they wanted to look it up online, it's still not correct. So we're voting on something that our people have never, in 2 years, almost 3 years, they've never even seen the original amendment to it. That's a major concern to me.
Any other discussion?
Is it not on there? Is it not upline?
It is not. It was not included, it was in the submission that Catherine sent to Muni Code for updates, and we're not sure why it's not been codified and put online, because I was looking for it myself. Although the version that was in your packet, what is the corrected version from the original 2018 that we did look at last month.
But again, and this doesn't highlight, this is what we were given, it doesn't highlight what the changes even are. So I wanted to compare language, I wanted to be prepared. Not only do I not think it should go through anyways, but without having a proper comparison, or are people even being able to see it?
I have a few comments just before we vote on this. I did not get a door hanger, but I did have it sent to me, and I was looking at it, and a lot of the misinformation that I've heard over and over about how many raises and all of those type of things. One person mentioned that you should not vote on this. It's not giving Christine a raise, it's raising the salary to a reasonable $28 for the president of the village, which you'll receive for a year. After that, it's setting the groundwork for what we need to do in the future. Not in part of this ordinance, but I think, and I'll bring this up for next time, is to look at hiring the treasurer and clerk. And people talk about you should vote for that because they're representing the people, but the job that they do is a job. The treasurer takes care of the funds and works with that. They aren't setting policy, they aren't voting on the board, and they are somebody that you can have, the way it is now, you can have somebody elected and you're saddled with them for 4 years, good or bad, unless you do a recall or the governor removes them. And if it's a hired position, then it's, people have to perform and do the job. So I think you have every right to vote and be part of this board in this decision. Some of the things I just read, as far as what I have seen in the village, as far as what has happened in the last 3 years has been great. When you first took office, we had the OPED liability. We had to do a report to the state where we could be managed and have that. A report was put together. We were trying to work with consultants. That was something as far as how much you work with consultants, and that wasn't really something that was palatable for them. It was rejected. This board, even I remember talking about it, like I didn't think the numbers all made sense, but we put it forth and the state rejected it. When you came in, we had a consultant put together a comprehensive plan and it was accepted by the state. So using consultants, we are going to be fixing our roads. We have the road program. What we've done before, besides in the last 10 years, nothing, would be what some people would think is common sense. You take the worst road, see how much money you got, throw it at that road and do a fix. That is not how to fix it. You might, in taking a look at the whole thing as a whole, spend that money to keep the other roads repaired so they don't go to that deteriorated before you have to tear out and do a road that needs to be replaced anyway. So we're putting together a complement, I am so thrilled that we're actually going to be doing the roads. This is becoming an upscale community. The home values are very high. People want to have good roads. We want to have that infrastructure. We don't want to pay more than we have to, but we want to have that quality. When I came here, I kept on looking for a 3-year budget. Every year we did a 1-year budget. We couldn't get a 3-year. We now have a 3-year budget. That's because we worked with consultants. We kind of flew by the seat of the pants with our wastewater treatment on what the costs are. We weren't really managing where we were going down the road. We ended up implementing a fee that some people didn't like. It's not a huge fee, but if we collect it now, it's not going to be a brick wall that we're going to be hitting. So this is what the consultants and things are doing, and this is what people do. I mean, if you think you're smart enough that you don't need to bring anybody for experts, you're foolish. The road study, the union contracts, you just finished doing the union contracts, and I believe you have an agreement that came by here. For your first time coming in here, yeah, I applaud you. I think you've done an excellent, excellent job. Our street crosswalks. This board, you brought to us a proposal where we could go after a grant and spend, I think it was about $10,000. Some people on the board said, no, parking's more important. Not that they had an opportunity, but you saw that opportunity. We spent the money. The board had the wisdom to do that, and we receive $160,000 that are coming for that. Then parking comes along, and you found a property next to the post office. I think another board member had mentioned that they had looked at it for their own personal use, but you brought it to the board with a reduced price to create a parking lot. So you've taken the crosswalks, you've taken the parking, you have done an outstanding job.
And it sounds like we've paid
And
her
for
for that, and that is
$14,
the amount of money
for
that she's made,
$14
and
an
that we've
hour.
paid her for.
Excuse me, I'm still speaking. For $14.25, once you put together a comprehensive study, had you not even put together that study, it would be hard for us to sit there and be able to do that. But when you see the numbers and you see what's there, they speak for themselves. And I think you deserve every bit of that raise. It
May I
wasn't
have the
even
floor
what
now?
the study had said was the higher raise. I'm finished now, Megan.
You talk about setting the groundwork for the future. I'm okay with that. Then let's have this go into effect after the next election.
I think it was recommended when you changed the ordinance back in 2018, I think, Mark, didn't you make a recommendation to have an ordinance or something put in place that would not allow salary changes?
No, I didn't make that recommendation. You may recall, I was troubled, and I have been, not just in 2018, but as long as I've been doing this on behalf of the village, for which I'm very thankful. I'm troubled about change of compensation for elected officials after attaining an office. I've been very concerned about that. At the time the issue came up in 2018, I was still, and I still am, but concerned about it. But I researched it. I looked into it. I talked to other municipal attorneys. I talked to people at the Michigan Municipal League. And I believe under the General Law Village Act that the council has the ability to change the salaries or the compensation as has been presented. So I think you have the legal authority to do what's before you. Whether you do it or not is your choice, as is every issue that comes before you. 4 votes prevail. And so you have the ability to address it, but I don't think it's prohibited. I don't think you're prevented from doing it. But historically, I have had concerns about it, and I've expressed those concerns. I engaged in some self-hand-wringing, but as I expressed when the issue came up in 2018, I think you have the ability to do it, the lawful ability to do it. And so I'm not troubled by your legal ability to act on this.
Okay. And then I got other points. I know, Bob, we were talking about the president's salary, but I think the changes to the administrative pay. And my understanding, and I'm not sure who else was here, and I wasn't, it was about 84 when that originally went into place. That was put into place as an intent to allow the clerk the ability to do their job. The president before that never made that salary, ever. There was no benefits, there was no retirement that went along with that presidential pay, and they did it prior to 84 without any of that, right? The clerk has traditionally always ran the village, even prior to 84. And then there was an amendment. My understanding in 18, the amendment had to be made to even give yourself the pay of the administrator. So that just seemed like a huge conflict. So it was a separate pay. You brought it back in, and I think it was even pointed out then that you're collecting a president's pay and an administrative pay, and that's in the ordinances that you can't collect for more than one position.
That was part of the discussion that Mark and I had originally, the performance of the duties, and Mark was in agreement that the administrator was assigned duties as appointed by the president. Therefore, the administrator is doing the duties of the president.
So
By
then
statute.
why did the ordinance have to change for you to keep that pay?
Because the ordinance specifically said that it had to have that amount put in it. That amount is what the residents were paying, had always been paying, and the ordinance, the general law village mandates that that ordinance include that amount, and that ordinance was never amended to include that amount. It was set by resolution of this board.
So the pay would go to who it was appointed to?
The pay would go to whoever's doing the duties.
And then we added insurance and retirement, right? And then some other concerns that I've heard the board talk about before, maybe before my time, was with Marion. And when she retired, and I think the quote was the sweet deal she set up for herself, and she didn't even have a vote. And now we look at what's happening now with someone that does have a vote on her own sweet deal. So it's concerning. It really is, to double the pay. And I understand it might be justifiable, Matt, but to justify all that at once, when I think it was pointed out, 75 cents an hour for someone else, nickel and diming other contracts or agreements, I just.
What was the pay, 45 an hour that it was recommended?
The wage and compensation said $40 an hour.
40 an hour.
Correct. Other municipalities,
For a full-time employee or part-time?
for the performance of those duties, it's $40 an
And
hour.
if you think this is a part-time job, especially with all the things that have happened, there's no way.
She's at a meeting.
If you don't think there's 40 hours put in every week,
Is there any discussion, other discussion from this board? I prepared a statement I'd like to read before we entertain a motion, so please indulge me for a moment. I'm so honored that all of you are here. Thank you for caring about our village, that you should choose to be here at this council meeting instead of being with your family, at an important school event, or maybe even work. For all of you here tonight, or if you're just watching on Facebook, the live stream, I encourage all of you to come and spend a day, or even a few hours, in our village hall. Come and witness our amazing staff, the hard work that they do. We continue to put the needs of our residents first and help them solve issues with professionalism and courtesy, and we look forward to your feedback. I read a quote recently that speaks to the path I have chosen to follow in my role as village president. It's by Brene Brown. I don't know if anybody else follows her. It reads, "Courage is contagious. A critical mass of brave leaders is the foundation of an intentionally courageous culture. Every time we are brave with our lives, we make the people around us a little braver and our organizations bolder and stronger." Romeo Village President is a humbling job, to say the least. I took it on. I put myself out there with the goal to preserve what Romeo holds dear and yet improve things for future generations. Prior to me assuming office, past presidents were very hands-off in the day-to-day operations. They chose to appoint someone to fulfill their duties with a salary of $30,000. This is much like a village manager, but without the required ordinance to officially transfer authority. In order to hold myself accountable for the duties that were mine by law, Clerk Trapp and I agreed to split the $70,000 earned by former clerk administrators. We performed a reorganization. We realigned the roles and responsibilities back to what the general village law states, having the clerk's salary remain at $40,000 and the president's at $30,000. So there was no increase in payroll to the taxpayers. Having a hands-on president has improved accountability and transparency of government operations. We have found revenue options other than through taxation to better our community. We began fixing the sidewalks and are soon going to fix the roads. We tackled the mounting debt liabilities and are forming capital asset management plans for our water and sewer plants. Investments have been made, and we found significant savings through changes in our employee health care plan and waste hauler services, all of which has resulted in a $1.8 million fund balance. My request for a salary increase is not easy to make. It takes courage to stand up and ask for a change, especially in such a public political setting. But now, as my term nears its end, we must look to future leaders and a way to attract professionals who will carry forward the progress that we have made. Future presidents who will live, eat, and breathe Romeo as I do. They will do the job that they were elected to do while earning a respectable salary, along with our other office staff and supervisors, so that not only can they plan for Romeo's future, but for their own financial futures. Building from this solid foundation of qualified professionals, a better, financially stable Romeo will emerge to benefit all who work, live, and visit our historic village. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any action?
I'd like to make the
Go ahead.
motion that we move forward with ordinance number 522B.
Support?
We have a motion by Bartholomew.
We did get as trustees, we got an email from a resident that wasn't able to be here tonight. I'd like that to be entered into a public record, official record.
She was contacted actually by 2 people from the office, but we will include her comments. All right. Can you call the roll, please?
I mean, we're still in discussion.
No.
We're not?
We have a motion on the table.
And seconded, and then we discuss, right? Isn't that the process?
No, we discussed it first. We discussed it first.
But
No,
then
you
there's
can
discussion
dis-
after the motion is seconded,
You can discuss again.
right? So I know you pointed out, Bob, that you think this is more about the position. What she just read made it more about her and her deserving of a raise. So I think that just credited that she shouldn't be voting on this.
That's
And
not
it-
what I heard her
and-
read.
And if it was truly about the position and the longevity of the village, then it shouldn't be an issue to go into effect with the next election. If that's the true intent and meaning that she just presented, then there shouldn't be any issue with that.
I would think there's some board members that would think Christine should be making $300 a month and doing the job too, so that's not any surprise. And either you like what she said or you don't.
Roll call, please.
Bartholomew?
Yes?
Edwards?
Yes.
Poznanski?
No.
Fowler?
No.
Hart?
Yes?
Parker?
No.
President Lozon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And that's for 32 hours a week instead of 40, right?
She goes to a lot of meetings throughout the week.
Don't leave yet, because we're going to talk about raising your water rates at the end, so hold on.
Right, so it doesn't hit a brick wall. That was a
All right, let's
consultant.
move on to our road plan proposal. You have in your packet, we'll give them just a few minutes so we can hear.
We should have had the road proposal
Proposal
first.
first,
Yeah,
yeah.
listen to this.
Yes, exactly. The road plan proposal, so obviously this is something we voted to move forward on. I have met with Vitrino Consulting. We've also, who discussed the process, right? We need to have this study and a road plan put in place before we can take it to the voters to decide if they want to actually approve this or not. So this work has to be done. His recommendation, and you can see the breakdown of the bills, municipal analytics, not to exceed $5,000 for the proposal. Our engineering firm, Hubble, Roth and Clark, $4,558, and Vitrino Consulting, $1,300. So the total and estimated project cost is $10,858.
I'd like to make a motion to accept this and budget the $10,858.
We have a motion
Support.
by Hart, we have support by Poznanski.
I would like to point out, though, I'm confused as to why we even need to involve Vitrino Consulting. Couldn't we save that $1,300? Both of the other two bids talk about submitting proposals and doing presentations. And then we're essentially just paying Vitrano to put both of those together in one place and then also present on it. So it seems redundant. And that if he's a consultant, why wouldn't his firm do these things anyways? He's like subcontracting this out.
His contract is for a fee-based task. When we approve expenditures, it's on a per-project base. He was involved, you asked him back, in the original road proposal, you asked him back to re-update that road proposal. Therefore, he's involved in gathering this data, and he'll, again, bring it back to presentation.
I don't think it's needed any longer. If they're gonna come back with presentations and they're gonna, have a strategic analysis, and they're gonna propose delivery of services noted in the attachment, and they're both gonna do presentations themselves. I just don't see that we need to incur another $1,300.
Can you call the roll, please?
Hart?
Yep.
Poznanski?
No?
Parker?
No.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
Fowler?
No.
President Melvin?
Yes?
Motion carries.
Okay.
Good point, Megan.
Good, so we will move back forward on the road plan. All right, you have in your packet trick or treat road closure. Obviously, this is just housekeeping. As I mentioned in my president's report, trick or treating is on, in the Central Business District on October 30th. We have closed the road the last several years, looking to do that again with the closure at one end by our police department, the closure at the other end by our fire department, and
I'd like to make the motion that we accept this permit for the Romeo event.
Support.
okay. So we have a motion by Bartholomew, support by Poznanski. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. The utility rate study RFP. As you can see in your packet, the last time that we did a rate study was on December 2015. The last time the rates were increased and adopted, that was based on a recommendation by our accountant, Tim, so that the enterprise fund itself would be self-funding and we were not paying for that out of the general fund for the expenditures that are included. Ford Motor Company, announced their closing. They are the biggest user on our system. About 40% of our revenues are generated from that user. It will be a significant loss if and when they do shutter that facility while they remediate it and sell it to somebody else. Hopefully that won't happen, and hopefully they will agree to stay. I have met with them several times. I continue to work with them and the MEDC to market and develop a strategy for future uses for that land. In advance of that, I recognize that Ford Motor Company has the only 12-inch main that we have in the village, and one 8-inch main. They are one of 2 users that have an 8-inch main on our system. And so we, right now, according to the rate study, they pay the same $7 ready-to-serve fee that all of our residents pay for a normal tap off the water system. Having a 12-inch tap and 500,000 gallons in reserve for future development at Ford Motor Company should come with a fee. There's also some considerations for our seniors. We have had in place, I don't know where it came from, I don't know who developed it, but a minimum usage fee that we have every month. I realize it's a strain on some of our seniors. There are a lot of people who don't utilize that water, but yet they pay that minimum fee. There's been some recent court changes, some laws, court rulings, that have come down that said minimum usage is not going to be allowed anymore because people are being forced to pay for something they're actually not using, and I understand all of that. So in theory, we would look to have a rate study, which has historically been done by our auditing firm, Paul Bailey. The last time we paid him, what was that fee? I was looking for that date.
Is it this invoice on the back?
Yeah, the invoice on the back. Nearly $10,000 is what it cost us for the rate study that Stewart, Revay, and Whipple did back in 2014. So that was the last rate study. I think that it would be a worthwhile discussion to send out an RFP to have an estimate made for an updated rate study. It may be that our rate system is antiquated, and we could assist our seniors better by removing that minimum usage bill. And we could also properly set the rates for our commercial users, those of a 12-inch main and an 8-inch main, so that we would be able to have a little more stabilization through the Ford shutdown. So that's why I put that on the agenda. I think it would be worthwhile just to have an RFP created so that we would know how much the study would cost. So.
Is this something we send to the accountants again, or?
No, I think that it would be an outside firm. Municipal Analytics is one firm that bids out. There are, Plant Moran has done some utility rate studies. We can ask our current auditing firm if they do that. I do not know the answer,
Okay.
if they prefer. But we would draft the RFP, we would put it on the mitten,
I
which
think I'd
is
feel
our
more
normal
comfortable if
process.
an actual engineering firm was doing it, like a Plant Moran or something like that.
Yes, absolutely. But the first course of action is really just to draft the RFP and then send it out for bid and find out how much it's gonna cost us to do that if we want to invest the funding to do that, so.
So this was done just, what, 14, just over 7 years ago? Or just over 7 years. Was there anything done with this study that showed, like, suggested or recommended increases over time that we've already maybe have?
Well, I'm assuming it does because this rate increase was adopted in 2015. That was the last rate increase prior to us adjusting the sewer rates last year per Tim's recommendation. But I wasn't around at that time. I just asked Catherine to track down the last
Invoice, but do we have the
so that we
actual
knew.
study?
No, I do not.
Is that something we can, I'm sure it's gotta be filed somewhere, right?
I'm sure we could call the auditing firm and ask them for it.
And get it,
Copy of
and see what it was then? See if they have already something recommended throughout the next 10 years or whatever?
Well, it would have been in board packets, right?
Right.
You know, I just finally got rid of a lot of that old stuff.
Right. A rate study from 2014 probably isn't as
Too much
applicable
time.
to what
You'd see
our
what was in it,
current
but-
expenditures are. It's like the parking study that we looked at in the 1990s, right? Yes, it was there, but it's outdated. It needs to be updated. The same premise would occur.
No, I agree.
I think
So-
also before 2008, I think we paid for a lot of the water through our general fund, like 90+%. And the thought of the village was then, well, we had the money, you know, so on and so forth. And you could quote unquote write your water bill off your taxes that way, because it was part of the tax. Well, we couldn't do that anymore after 2008, when things were kind of recondensing and things on us. We had to separate out the water system, the whole wastewater treatment system and the water system. And that's, I think to some degree, just kind of knee-jerk, making some moves in that direction. That's where the price increases came from. And to do that overnight would have been like hitting a brick wall, like you were talking about before. So we couldn't do that. And so we kind of inched it along, you know, every couple of years to, you know, try to take some of that burden away. It's still paying them way too much then out of the general fund that we didn't really have. But, so I don't know if we did studies back then in the early 2000s or middle, you know.
You know, I was just
to
looking at
2010.
this and I just didn't know if there was something already in place that we could go off of.
I think back then it was just Paul Bailey showing up saying, hey, you don't have enough money, you better raise your rates. Okay. And we're gonna raise them by, okay, this much, there you go. This will make people feel bad, but they won't feel too bad, type of thing. And that was so non-scientific.
I can respect that. Yeah, I wasn't arguing with doing something, I just didn't know if we had something.
So I don't think
From
there
the
is
last
any,
one.
I don't think there is any previous studies before 2014.
Just him looking at the numbers.
It's just Paul Bailey
Calculating
looking
the
at the
overall
numbers,
cost.
opening it up, look at page 18.
Well, I thought that's what you said, we spent $9,500 for was a study.
That's in 2014 though.
That's what I was
But
questioning.
before,
Yeah,
before
that's what
that,
I was
though,
asking
there-
about, this study.
Oh, I thought you were asking for study.
No, the
before that.
2014, and if it had anything scheduled out for moving
Oh,
forward,
that I don't know.
you know.
So I'd like to make the motion that we move forward with the RFP study.
I don't think that the cost should exceed, maybe $500 or so for publication and whatnot if there's an expense in drafting the RFP. So, just giving you, there's a
I'll
cost
support.
associated with that,
We had some.
but, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we'll move forward with that. Last up, our First Street property sale discussion. Thank you for sticking around for this. We do have a party that is interested in purchasing that First Street parcel. When we talked about purchasing the Church Street and converting that into a parking lot, I mentioned that could be a funding source, right? Rather than using our fund balance, we have 2 parcels that we could look to possibly sell. I think we just sort of mentioned it. We didn't obviously take any action to it. I remember that there was some discussion from some of the residents in my early years as a trustee, and there was some talk about dedicating it as a park. Obviously, that didn't happen. There was some talk about the adjacent property owners purchasing it and developing it as, their own sort of community association, whatever, if they wanted to maintain that. But somebody came forward, is interested in purchasing that. Obviously, we're looking at a significant expenditure for the parking lot, possibly 2 parking lots. And so I just wanted to have a discussion. If you would like me to have Mark draft an ordinance allowing for the sale, we would have to do that. And then we could look to see what it's worth. I don't know. I'm not a realtor.
Landlocked, or they were off of First Street, they would have access?
It's not landlocked, but it is very narrow, and I vaguely remember our
Isn't First
discussion.
Street a private road?
No, it's a Romeo,
First Street.
it's a village road, First Street, but in order to, it's R1, it's residential, so, it would have, if whoever purchased it wanted to put apartments or whatever, they'd have to get it rezoned, but.
The pump,
back there.
but, and that's why we plow it, but I thought that was privately owned or something. We're going back when we talked back 8 years ago.
I mean, that's what we did when we looked at, I always call it the First Street, the street out by, the trailhead. The one that we just got on tax foreclosure. That's the last property that I know that we sold, right? We said we're gonna accept sealed bids for a purchase offer, and that was, we rejected them all initially, right? I think, Zach, you said, let's go back out and have any and all final offers, just trying to maximize the purchase price. And we could do that, or we could do nothing. It's just an opportunity, again, to not use taxpayer dollars if we can sell the property and asset. There's also that parcel that is on Sisson Street, across the old Romeo DPW site, across from the Croswell Elementary School.
It'd be nice to know what the property's
two
worth,
assets.
what the value of it is.
Not just maybe monetary value, but what worth that would have to the village in the future if we ever had to expand on any of the equipment back there. Would that land serve a purpose for us in the future?
The pump's very far back there, way down the road.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we'd ever need that property for any of that.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's not my area of expertise, so.
It's right, it's residential.
It's a big lot,
right.
yeah.
I believe it's 5 acres.
Yeah.
That we have back there.
Mm-hmm. I
I've
believe
had
it's 5
conversations with
acres.
some of the planning commission members regarding an auxiliary cemetery.
Right, and I think you mentioned that, and I went, we don't need another cemetery, right? The last thing we need is another
They
cemetery.
got no more
What do
bodies.
you think?
Right, we can do some great planning, right? Yes.
Bruce, I was talking about that in the first hand, it's
Mhm.
5 acres. It's probably close for, I'm just thinking of something else that is.
Yeah.
Go north of First Street.
I know 3 acres, I know.
It's on the south
North
part of
of
First
First
Street.
5 acres, it's some other properties, pretty close.
Well, find out the appraised value.
Yes.
No problem. That would be the first start.
Would you like to entertain offers? I mean, the appraised value is one thing, but what is somebody willing to pay? Property values are high right now. Again, we are not obligated to
It's not on
accept.
Benjamin, it's on
We still
First
have
Street.
that access road.
Down the
It's like a
street.
block north.
All right.
He's
That's a wooded
thinking,
lot.
he's thinking the corner house that burnt down, I think.
Yes.
South,
Oh, no, forget that.
right.
But our road too, I mean,
South.
we'd have to.
If purchased,
include that in the
then
prices.
it could be developed, would be my understanding.
Probably.
It would be it's zoned R1. I know that much. It's zoned R1.
And you could
So,
put several homes on it then if it's 5
Possibly.
acres? is
I
that-
would,
That's
Just
about
probably
5
about the
acres.
footage,
We put about four.
you'd have to worry about the frontage, I guess.
right, proper setbacks, all of that would apply. As Zach knows, a site plan would have to be reviewed and,
But somebody would need to give us the price based on how it could be best used. So, you know, if somebody that could say you could put this on it and that gives you X dollars, you know.
5 acres back there, almost 5.
I believe it's almost 5, yes.
It's pretty big once you get back
Yeah,
there.
A couple $100 grand.
It's all wooded and
Just a couple $100
So I can contact,
grand. An appraiser first, I think. would be-
I can just, contact the assessor and
Yes.
find out what the assessed value of it is to start with. That, that's gonna be the baseline. I just need to know if you're interested in entertaining offers to purchase it.
As long as there's a
Or not.
clause that we could refuse any and all.
We're not obligated, correct,
We're not
Mark?
obligated
To
to
accept,
put it
yes.
out there, we just want to know.
And if I could just say to this gentleman, what he got up and spoke on, I get it, it'd be nice if every resident had Romeo property that's all wooded and it's like a park, and it'd be nice, everybody would love to have that behind, their homes and that, but at the same time, we have to look at, what's the possibilities of, like Christine said, offsetting the cost of the park.
Not the park, the parking lot.
I mean, the parking lot.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. But I understand where you're coming from. I mean, no one wants to see that being taken up by a couple houses, but we have the job to, look out for everybody.
But
So-
sometimes it's a short-term gain, so you get that short-term monetary value, and you lost that property forever.
Well, we've had it forever. I
So
mean,
once, that's why Rochester's and Oakland Townships and Birmingham, they keep these green spaces, because it's nice for the people that live there. It increases their value, so you're actually reducing our value by selling the woods. Because I know that was privately owned, and sometimes municipalities can buy that, but it was part of it, and, that's why big planning commissions for bigger areas, you're talking big cities, they always keep their green spaces. Even if they get $1 million for it, they're going to keep it. The value in New York City, the value of their green space, they don't care, they keep it. So there is a value to us to have it there. And it does a lot more. So I know $100,000 might be, I can make $200,000. There's a property at Benjamin and First, the guy's selling for $125,000, it's a third of an acre. You have a 5-acre parcel. So unless you're getting $1 million for that property, which I doubt you would, anybody be paying too much, that's the value. So if you accept $250,000, that's a very short-term thought process.
That's our
Cemetery.
deer preserve there, isn't it?
Auxiliary.
That's where all our deer come from, running down Tilson?
We'll keep the green space
There's
for
a
you.
lot of people that live around it.
Isn't there some sort of
It's not just a
endangered
couple homeowners
species
here.
frog or
and
something,
that
so we
street is
couldn't
so
develop
weird.
it?
What happens when fire truck?
Never heard of that one.
Go down there.
Go to bed.
Sure,
We
we
could-
could find some sort of.
we could
endangered
mandate that it be
species.
widened. I mean, there's,
He lives on the corner. Can't widen. He just remodeled his house. He doesn't want his yard to be.
the southwest or the southeast corner, or the,
Southwest.
okay,
I have to go look at this.
okay.
Your input's very valuable, Tim, yes.
The only reason that you might want to consider keeping it is
Mhm.
the process we're in right now, drilling a new well.
Mhm.
You have to have an isolation zone of so many 100 feet to drill a well. And hard to drill, there's already been 4 wells back there. You're gonna run out of property to drill a new well in that, where the wells are right now. So eventually, you are gonna have to find someplace else to drill a well in the village. And being that the iron removal plant less costly in the future if you have to move from where they are now to the north side of the IRP, or if you have to, because if you have to drill a new well, try and find another piece of property in the village to drill on.
Would the one on Sisson be any
Because they have a
value
house
that
and a
way?
well behind.
Or is it?
Would not be a good spot to drill, being the old DPW site was there.
All right. I don't know how deep you go and what.
Well, they can
All right.
bore.
And there again, you have to run the water main from that site to the iron removal plant.
I mean, it wouldn't be ideal, obviously, but at least it gives us an option.
It would not be
Right.
ideal on Sisson Street, no. I mean, we definitely.
Well, I mean, even,
Economical to run a new water main from that well there.
Mm-hmm.
even, you said the old DPW, there was a lot of what?
Well, that's where the old DPW site was. I mean, I wasn't around when that site was there.
So who knows what got spilled?
Drainage.
Toxins.
Brownfield, these.
What about the old,
They can drill through anything.
by the Kmart, where the Kmart used to be? Is that still functional?
Our backup well, yeah.
It's still our backup well, but,
It's not really a backup
Didn't you
well, is
explain
it?
that we didn't wanna push the water that way?
just in case,
Right.
but it doesn't go to the iron removal plant at all.
Oh, it doesn't?
No, I mean, that main.
That'd be a whole other project.
Trying to work out a deal with Washington to get rid of the main on South Van Dyke there.
Right.
It's really old.
Yep.
and
There's a
Okay.
long-term benefit for us to keep it.
So we'd be better off selling that property.
Yeah. I don't know if we own that property.
I assumed we did just because we
Just
had a
where
well.
the,
I
just
guess
where
I
the
don't
well
know.
is, right, we own that little island, yeah. Mhm. And I think we were approached by the owner to like abandon that, not necessarily to sell it to them, but
Well, do you want to
Yeah.
just see what the property would be worth?
I'm just looking for some input, right? I can tell the interested party thanks, but no thanks. I can find out how much it's worth. Mark can draft an order, whatever you want me to do with it.
I'd find out how much it's worth,
Yeah.
and let's leave it at that for now,
Okay,
Yep.
then I will bring back information next month.
because you gotta take his considerations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, you ready to go into closed session?
Property
Yes.
that, like I said, is part of what you offer to the citizens, they have a nicer home for that.
Yeah, but that piece of property really only benefits the people on First Street.
No, I
No,
disagree.
Benjamin Street, the other street that goes
Did
behind
you
it,
use that?
There's,
I would love to if the village would do something useful like a park. All we have is where the downtown gazebo
Well,
is.
it's available right now. You could go to walk the dog down there.
I absolutely would.
But
If-
you
if
also-
it's
Do you,
private
though?
property.
you also have two residents.
No, it's not, it's not private, we own it.
Village property.
And there's
So I
a.
can
We've owned it for,
I can
Well,
walk
Maybe
around
we
the
just have to put up some type
Yeah, put a sign
of
saying.
green
If we
barrier
really
or
own
something
it.
that distinguishes from whose property is
that's
whose
why the
property.
issue is not, are we gonna buy it? The issue is, are we gonna sell it to a homeowner or someone who's
No,
gonna own it?
I think we should keep it. I'll go
But that's
walk
the problem.
around.
It'd be a little tough.
It's kinda tucked away and so
not-
it's
no
really
trails
kind of
and
a
on.
private.
And no deer hunting. No deer hunting.
You can walk down.
Yeah, don't.
I'm sure he doesn't want a dog run there either.
I don't have no.
Then the deer will be
yeah,
all
it's a
over
dog
the
park.
village. Weren't your dogs over there? The deer will be all
Also
over.
Bradley Street and another street, so there's many homes.
And all the residents are the exact same.
And so 8 years ago, I got many signatures to give to you, how many people didn't want that, it wasn't just several homeowners.
With all.
I recall that.
So like you can get a grant for a village for $500,000, it happens all the time. So a grant from the federal government would solve this, instead of giving part of your property away forever.
Can I call you to help me write that?
Yeah, I know some people that can help.
That'd be awesome. We can look to do that.
So get a dog,
I will.
Go walk, and he's gonna help me write a grant, right? Absolutely.
cause it's
All right.
there. It's
All right, we
open.
ready to go in closed
Let's
session?
move on, it's 9:30. The
All
last agenda item is a closed session for
Yeah.
our POAM union labor negotiations. So at this time, I'm going to adjourn the public meeting and look for a motion to enter into closed session.
Yep, I'll make a motion to
It
go
will
into
take
closed
longer than a half an
session
hour.
for the
It should not.
POAM union labor negotiation.
We have a motion by Hart,
Support.
support by Poznanski. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Roll call, please.
Oh, sorry, roll call.
Closed session, roll call. Hart,
Yes.
Soснanski,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Bartholomew,
Yes.
Edward,
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes, that's all he does,
Welcome back from closed session. We have a motion to accept
Yes, I'll make a motion to accept, the tentative agreement
the POAM.
of the POA, yes.
We have a motion by Hart,
Bartholomew,
Yes?
President Mills,
Yes?
Edwards,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
7-0.
I'd like a unanimous motion to adjourn
Unanimous.
at 9:38.
Hey.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Handsome, I didn't know. I don't even know what happened.